And that's the part you have to nail if you want to be a serious contender for the role. In this episode, I'll discuss both what to say and how to say it. Interviewing is all about storytelling. You may not want to mention that you're married with kids, nor do they want to hear about what you ate for dinner last night. Did you grow up in Alaska? Do you have that certain je ne sais quoi? My superpower is... My name is Mark Williamson, and I'm the head of talent acquisition for a leading U.S. company. In this episode, I'll discuss both what to say and how to say it when answering the Tell Me About Yourself interview question. I'll essentially help you craft your 2 to 3 minute elevator pitch to describe who you are. And if you stick around until the end, I'll show you how I would answer this question, giving you a winning example to mirror your answer after. I help frustrated job seekers successfully navigate the job search and interview process. Today's content is specifically geared towards experienced professionals with 2 or more years of work experience. So if you're a college student or recent college grad with less than 2 years of experience, I've provided a link below to a resource detailing how you should answer this question. So check out that link because your approach to this question should differ drastically from experienced professionals. Honestly, what you actually say when answering this question is not really all that important. But this icebreaker question will give experienced professionals the opportunity to show the interviewer what type of person they are about to interview. Are you smart and articulate? Do you have that certain je ne sais quoi? Or are you a rambling, unimpressive candidate who does not stand out from the crowd and who would not be their choice to represent the company? As I said, what you say when answering this interview question is not all that important. It's how you say it. And that's the part you have to nail if you want to be a serious contender for the role. As I said earlier, the question, tell me about yourself, is often used as an icebreaker, and it's unlikely that your answer to this question will land you the job. So don't take a ton of time answering this question. You will definitely put yourself at a disadvantage if you do. Given that most interviews are scheduled for a maximum of 45 minutes to 1 hour, if you take 10 to 15 minutes to answer this question, the interviewer is going to be annoyed, to say the least. In their mind, they're saying, you just took up a quarter of the interview time on a question that's not even intended to be that deep. They'll also make assumptions, possibly true assumptions, like you're long-winded, you're disrespectful of the process, or even worse, that you're wasting their time. So don't go long. However, you should take 2 to 3 minutes to paint a vivid picture of who you are. So let's get into it. As someone who's been in the workforce for a while, you've likely already established yourself professionally, whether that be for 2 years or for 20 plus years. So you should not lean on personal life, high school, or college-related activities when answering this question. Now, before I go on, let me expound a bit on sharing personal information. Some personal information should simply be off limits during an interview. For example, there are many things that an interviewer can't ask you, such as religious affiliation, political beliefs, sexual orientation, marital status, whether or not you have kids, amongst other things. So avoid these topics if at all possible during an interview. However, there are still some things about your personal life that you can share that are not as sensitive and that could help the interviewer get a better picture of who you are. But as someone with an established work history, sharing this type of information should be kept to a minimum. Next, let's discuss what types of things you should include when answering, "Tell me about yourself." First and foremost, interviewing is all about storytelling. And there are two quotes about storytelling you should remember throughout your interview journey, whether answering this question or others. Novelist and author Graham Greene said, "A story has no beginning or end. Arbitrarily, one chooses that moment of experience from which to look back or from which to look ahead." And author slash marketing practitioner slash copywriter Gary Halbert said, "The most often missing ingredient in a sales message is a sales message that doesn't tell an interesting story." I find both of these quotes extremely fitting, especially when it comes to answering the "tell me about yourself" question, which is essentially your own take on who you are and why you're special. In other words, your own personal sales message. When crafting your answer to this question, you have to pick a place in your work slash life history to start and a place to end. The interviewer likely doesn't want to hear about what you did as a toddler, nor do they want to hear about what you ate for dinner last night. Without careful thought, you could spew a bunch of irrelevant details that add no value to helping you stand out as someone with an interesting story to tell. So rather than arbitrarily choosing the moment of experience from which to look back or from which to look ahead, you're going to be very intentional about the span of time you cover in this answer. That span should be the beginning of your professional career up until the most recent job you've held, possibly with a brief snapshot of your personal life sprinkled in. So what, if any, personal information should you share? Again, feel free to leave out all personal information if you'd like. However, there are a couple of things you can choose to share, if you so choose, that generally leave a good impression in the interviewer's mind or serves to establish a connection with the interviewer. You could start by stating where you're originally from and how/why you ended up where you currently live. Sharing where you're from is a great way to establish a connection with the interviewer. Maybe he or she grew up or lived in the same or similar place. Did you grow up in Alaska, Hawaii, the Deep South, the Midwest, the Northeast, the Pacific Northwest, Florida, California, Texas? Were you in a military family and lived all over the country or even overseas? It doesn't matter where you're from, but state it. It might just set you apart or establish a cool connection with the interviewer. Next, if you're married or have kids, you could consider mentioning this. Now, I know you're probably saying, "Mark, you just told us previously that was one of the things the interviewer cannot ask us, whether we were married or whether we had kids." And you're right. The interviewer will not ask you this question, or at least they should not. So this would be strictly a voluntary sharing of that information if you so choose to. Most interviewers view being married and having kids as a sign of maturity, stability, and that you're capable of being responsible. So how might you weave this particular fact into the interview? Well, you could mention something like, "My wife and I have 2 kids who are both in middle school." One word of caution: if you're interviewing for a high travel job that will keep you away from home Monday through Thursday each week, or another job that might pull you away from your family for extended periods, you may not want to mention that you're married with kids. Now, interviewers are not supposed to hold something like this against you, so you shouldn't have to hide it. But you never know whether or not in the back of the interviewer's mind, they might go, "Man, this is a very taxing role. Maybe he just shared with me that he's got kids. They both play soccer, or they both are on the football team, and he's always at every practice or, every game." So certainly if you overshare and go that deep, it could certainly plant that seed in the person's mind. Is this the right role for you given the nature of travel associated with the role? So be careful deciding whether or not to share whether you're married with kids. Finally, You could state one or two hobbies that you have, and that's all you should share from your personal life. Do you have an upcoming job interview? Well, with 20 plus years of corporate recruiting experience, I know how frustrating the job interview process can be. Like how companies ask trick interview questions or how they choose candidates who lie during the interview over honest job seekers. Well, whether you've got 2 full weeks or less than 24 hours to prepare for your next interview, I've put together an interview training course that will teach you the 3 essential components of interview prep: how to answer the 25 most frequently asked interview questions, 10 questions designed to weed out unprepared job candidates, how to frame your interview answers for maximum impact, how to think on your feet during an interview when you're asked a question you're not prepared for, the proper way to follow up after the interview so that you remain memorable in a sea of job candidates, plus several additional game-changing tactics to ensure that you beat out the competition and land that next job. My downloadable interview training course can be completed in less than 1 hour. But trust me when I tell you, you'll be armed with insider interviewing strategies that will last you a lifetime. Details for how to get your copy of Prepare for the Job Interview in 24 hours or less can be found in the description or show notes below. Now back to the episode. Next, mention where you went to college and what you studied, or when you joined the military, how long you served, and what your specialization was, translated into civilian terms, of course. Or if you didn't go to college or serve in the military, describe the path you took after high school to enter your particular profession. Then give a brief summary of your professional career, making sure to include any big accomplishments or milestones you achieved along the way. This is not the time to detail every job on your resume and discuss all 9 bullets under each job. Instead, say something like, after getting my undergraduate degree in marketing, I embarked upon a career as a marketing professional with several market-leading consumer goods companies. Over the past 12 years, I've held roles ranging from social media manager to marketing automation manager to the head of demand generation for companies ranging from $500 million to $3 billion in revenue. As social media manager, I grew our Twitter account from less than 2,000 followers to over 1.5 million followers in 2 years. I was also instrumental in transitioning 2 companies we acquired onto our marketing automation platform, moving them from Marketo to HubSpot. Finally, state the following: my superpower is blank, and I would love to bring that skill to this role. Fill in the blank with the best trait or skill you feel you would bring to the role. As I stated earlier, I'm going to show you how I would answer this question if I were going through the interview process. So if the interviewer asked me, "So Mark, tell me about yourself," here is my unrehearsed answer. Well, I'm originally from North Augusta, South Carolina, a little town of less than 20,000 people that sits right on the border of South Carolina and Georgia, and is a neighbor to Augusta, Georgia, where the Masters Golf Tournament is played. My wife and I have 2 kids, a daughter who's a sophomore in college, and a son who's an 11th grader in high school. I attended college at the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, where I studied economics. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Economics. After graduating from Annapolis, I received a commission as an officer in the United States Navy, where I went on to serve almost 10 years as a surface warfare officer, achieving the rank of lieutenant. I lived in multiple places during my naval career, including Maryland, Rhode Island, Hawaii, San Diego, and back to my home state of South Carolina. In my last job in the Navy, I served as an officer recruiter, recruiting doctors, dentists, nurses, and other healthcare professionals for the Navy. I transitioned out of the Navy after getting married and my wife and I deciding to start a family. I translated my experience as a Navy healthcare recruiter into a civilian career in recruiting and talent acquisition, leadership, and management. Over the past 20 years, I've held recruiting-related positions of increasing responsibility for several leading companies in the IT services, telecom, publishing, and education technology industries. I've led college recruiting, military recruiting, and technology recruiting for leading organizations. I've also served as the head of recruiting, talent acquisition, and HR compliance for 2 companies. I've been a part of the due diligence teams for 3 major acquisitions and 5 to 7 other acquisition attempts over the course of my career. I enjoy playing golf in my off time, and I'm also an avid reader. So that's a little bit about me. My superpower is an amazing ability to lead teams made up of people with multiple skill sets and personalities and getting the most out of each and every one on the team. And I would love to bring that skill set to this role. You've got to just learn how to interview.